Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual town hall with Senator Elizabeth Warren. My name is Nico Mendoza, and I have the distinct honor and privilege to serve as Senator Warren's State Director here in Massachusetts. We are very excited to have you join us this evening and grateful for you taking the time to be with Senator Warren. One quick housekeeping note I wanted to make sure that you all knew about. If you are viewing tonight's town hall through the Zoom app and would like to use and see the closed caption option, just click on the icon at the bottom of your screen to turn on closed captioning. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. With that, I will turn it over to our senior senator, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator.
Thank you very much, Nico, and hello, Massachusetts. I wish that we could all be together tonight. I wish we could all stay and do selfies together, but we know that's just not possible right now. So let me just say, I hope that everybody on this call is staying safe and healthy. I just wanted a chance to be here with all of you this evening, partly to say thank you for all you've been doing, and partly just to talk about whatever is on your minds. Our country is in a crisis right now. The fight for social, racial, and economic justice has reached a new threshold. The coronavirus is raging out of control in multiple places around the country, hitting Black and brown communities the hardest. Unemployment rates are the highest since the Great Depression, and Donald Trump demonstrates every day that he is not able to govern at even the most elementary level. The Trump administration's response to this public health crisis has been cruel, heartless, and incompetent. If we don't get our act together, thousands more Americans will die and our economy will be brought to its knees. Today, as families are suffering, sick, and scared, Donald Trump's administration has basically just given up the fight to stem the tide of this virus. And it is so frustrating because we know what to do. We still need to dramatically ramp up testing, set up a nationwide contact tracing program, set standards and stick to them, and give the states the resources they need to get the job done. If we don't do this, we will never get ahead of this virus. We cannot rebuild our economy without taking concrete steps to stop the spread of COVID-19. We also need to take care of workers and their families, and that means protecting essential workers who are more likely to be women and more likely to be women of color, and who are risking their lives every single day to keep life as we know it moving forward. We need to extend help for small businesses and help for people who are unemployed. And we need protection for people so that they won't be made homeless or see their utilities shut off by this pandemic. We need to develop meaningful standards that are informed by science, standards that will protect our children in the reopening of our schools, standards that protect the safety of our teachers and our school bus drivers and our counselors and our cafeteria workers. We need procedures in place so that parents and teachers and other school personnel can come together to work out plans for their schools. And we need to make certain that our schools have all of the resources they need to carry out those plans. So look, there is a lot that we need to do. I'm going to stop talking so I can take just as many questions as possible from all of you. So Nico, who do we have first?
Thank you, Senator. And one more quick housekeeping note again for everybody who's joined us. When you all RSVP to join tonight's town hall, many of you, and thank you for doing so, many of you virtually raised your hands to ask the Senator a question this evening. We'll take as many questions as we can in the time allowed. So right now, everyone is on mute so that we can hear the person asking the question and also the Senator's response. When you are called on to ask a question, please unmute yourself either through the Zoom app or by pressing *6 on your phone. So we will jump right to it. And our first question we have here is from Raja in Quincy. Raja?
Hi, Senator Warren. Thank you so much for taking my question. My question is about childcare and how the pandemic has affected an already challenge, an already incredible challenge for families across the Commonwealth. We have some of the highest costs for childcare in the country. And before the pandemic, access and affordability was already an issue. And the challenge for so many childcare providers to reopen, given the CDC guidelines and trying to transform their spaces, whether in homes or in centers, into something that will maintain safety is difficult. And so I'm wondering what can be done to help get us through not only the pandemic, but beyond the pandemic to a stronger and a more equitable and affordable and accessible childcare system for families.
So thanks for the question, Riza, and you start in exactly the right place. Childcare was already reaching crisis proportions before the pandemic. Childcare centers were operating on razor-thin margins. And now with the pandemic and the need for smaller classes and higher costs, we really could see this broken system completely collapse. And let's just be clear, states cannot fix this all by themselves. It's going to take a real infusion of cash in order to support our child care centers and the families that use them. So Congresswoman Catherine Clark and I have been working together on this. We have put together a $50 billion child care bailout. It's critical for families and critical for our economy's recovery. The whole idea behind it is to make emergency grants so that we can keep child care centers in business and that we can keep workers on the payroll during this crisis. It ensures that there will be child care available for essential workers, and it makes long-term investments in childcare so that as parents start to go back into the workforce, ones who are not already leaving the home, that they will have childcare arrangements available for their kids. You know, I still remember what it was like when I was a young mom and I had my first full-time big deal teaching job. I was so excited and it was hard. You know, I was one of those parents who was cooking dinner late and doing laundry at 11 at night and doing my class preparations at midnight, but I could manage all of that. The part that nearly brought me to my knees was childcare. We cycled through one child care center, one babysitting arrangement after another, after another, after another. And ultimately, if it hadn't been for my Aunt B, who listened to me when I cried on the phone about it, I told her I was going to quit my job. And she said, well, I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived with 6 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy. And she stayed for 16 years. And if everybody had an Aunt B, this wouldn't be an issue. But everybody doesn't have an Aunt B. We need to treat childcare like basic infrastructure in this economy. We got to have roads and bridges so people can get to work. We've got to have electricity so that businesses can operate and people can operate their homes. Well, if you want parents of children, small children, to be able to work, then we've got to treat childcare as part of that infrastructure. So, Riza, help me, help Congresswoman Clark. We want to get this into the next bill in the corona response package that comes through the Senate and try to get this over to the president for his signature. Because without it, we're going to just keep dragging this economy down, dragging families down, and putting our babies at risk.
Thank you, Raja, for that question. Up next, it looks like we have George in Watertown. George?
George?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Senator Warren, thank you. Given the scenario you laid out with the incompetence of the current administration and the list of things you indicated that need to be worked on, in addition to the child bailout, what other specific things can Congress do and is Congress doing at the present time?
Well, there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
First thing we need to do is we need to get our arms around this pandemic.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do anything until we get COVID-19 under control. And that means more testing, it means contact tracing, it means enough resources so that people will be able, the states will be able to respond. The second thing we need to do is we need to put support directly into the economy. People who are unemployed, small businesses, I put childcare within that. The third thing we need to do, though, and I want to add here because I think it's so important, is we need to protect the right to vote. We are coming up on an election in November of 2020 that is just profoundly important. And we have already seen during this crisis, we have seen in Wisconsin, we have seen in Georgia, that when polling places aren't ready for it, when states aren't ready for it, we've seen the kind of chaos that ensues. So we need to be making changes at the federal level in the next Corona package response. And that means making vote by mail available for every American citizen. It means increasing support for voting in person, because there are many people who need to or want to be able to vote in person, but we've got to make sure that we're keeping our poll workers safe and that we're keeping our, and there's plenty of hand sanitizer and conditions are set up so people can safely come in and vote. And we need to make sure that we're protecting the post office and getting enough resources into the post office, because so that when there's vote by mail, that the ballots won't be lost, that they can get there in a timely way and be counted. Because understand this, the pandemic is layered on top of another problem. And that is, for years now, the Republican Party has taken as its mission to do what it can to suppress voting. And that means particularly suppressing voting in communities of color. They don't want to see people vote. They have decided that the way they will hang on to power is to try to keep as many people who might vote Democratic from being able to vote. Look, voting is the beating heart of our democracy. And so I believe one of the things we've got to really put pressure on right now is to make sure that we get enough resources and enough rules put in place at the federal level that when it comes election day, November 3rd, 2020, that every American citizen has a chance to vote and to make sure that vote gets counted.
Great. Thank you very much, George, for that question. Senator, we had actually an overwhelming number of questions on a particular topic, and I wanted to just make sure that you're able to address it, since it seems like many folks wanted to hear your thoughts on racial justice. This one came from Levi in East Boston, and Levi asks, how will you address the systemic racism within our governmental systems, from policing to judicial to the housing crisis, that's displacing so many low-income people of color and creating unprecedented homelessness that's negatively affecting our public health?
So thank you for the question, and thank you for the way you frame it, that this is not a single problem, this is a systemic problem. Right now, all across this country, people are protesting so that they can give voice to the injustice, to the pain, to the trauma that Black Americans have endured for far too long. All the while, COVID-19 continues to infect and kill African Americans at alarming rates. But the racist violence that killed George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor is not new in America. I am committed to fighting for racial justice, for real reforms that address police brutality and that dismantle racial disparities in every part of our society, from healthcare to education to housing. The way I see this, racism for generations has shaped crucial aspects of our economic and political system. So just being race neutral is not going to do the work that we need to get done. We have to make real change in our country, and it has to start in the criminal justice system. We have to reform how the law is enforced in America. We need accountability for law enforcement and accountability at every stage of the criminal justice system. We need to rethink our approach to public safety. And that means transitioning away from a punitive system of locking people up and investing in the kinds of community services that lift people up. But as you noted in your question, we have to acknowledge that racism is not confined to our criminal justice system. And that's why we've got to root out systemic racism in every part of society. We can start by putting in place proposals that will deliberately shrink the black-white wealth gap. We can start by passing my housing bill to establish a first-of-its-kind down payment assistance program for people who are living in formerly redlined communities. We can start by canceling student loan debt. We can start by putting frontline communities at the center of our environmental justice response. We can start by mobilizing more resources to communities of color. This is a hard time in our country, but there is so much that we can do. We just have to have the will to get out there and fight for it until we get it done. I'm in that fight all the way, and it's an honor to fight alongside you in it.
Thank you, Levi, for that question. Up next, we have Jake out in Hudson. Jake?
Jake?
You can either unmute yourself. There you go. I see.
Sorry, I'm unmuted.
That's okay. I've done the same thing.
My question is about, so we're dealing with two crises right now, the COVID crisis, obviously, and as well as climate change. And it seems like a good opportunity. One way to solve both of them is, lots of investment in energy efficiency and in green jobs and renewables and things like that. I just was curious, with both of these crises happening right now, given that you have a plan for everything, do you have any specific plans or ideas in mind, how to boost, spending and infrastructure on energy efficiency and green jobs, and how that might relate to the COVID crisis?
Jake, let me start by how I look at this, and it is on both of these. With the COVID crisis and the environmental crisis, I believe in science. I think that's where we need to start. And on the environmental front, I see this like the challenges that America has faced so many times before. The climate crisis is a crisis, but it is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create good union American jobs in clean and renewable energy. It's an opportunity to create jobs in infrastructure, in manufacturing, and to directly confront the racial and economic inequality that has been embedded in our fossil fuel economy. So I'll just give you a couple of places. I believe we need to decarbonize our electricity, our vehicles, and our buildings. Those three things are responsible for nearly 70% of all US carbon emissions. We can get rid of the carbon in all three by investing money in research and development of new technology, by leveraging government procurement so that the government agrees that it's going to use its purchasing power, which is enormous, to purchase clean, green, American-made products, and by prioritizing resources for people and communities that have been left behind by the fossil fuel economy and hit worst by climate change and by pollution. I think that if we take that approach, we can grow our economy, we can improve our health, and we can improve structural inequalities that are embedded in our current system. Again, I know the crisis is big, but I have real hope here that the window is open and that we can make some real change. So we got to do this one together, Jake.
Great question, Jake. Thank you. Senator, another topic that was overwhelmingly asked of folks, of you, is about school reopening in the fall, how to safely do it. And this question here is from Amanda out in Williamstown, who asks, what role should the federal government play, and specifically, what should the Senate do to help states adhere to the CDC guidelines for returning students, teachers, and staff safely to K-12 classrooms this fall? What should ordinary citizens do, and what considerations and concerns do you have about this issue?
So let's start with our goal. Like most folks, I want to see us get our kids back in school, back in class, back in learning when we can do so safely. And that's where we need to start this. It has to be with safety. The safety of our children, the safety of their teachers, the safety of the cafeteria workers and the school bus drivers and the counselors. In other words, the whole system. It's very much to me like when we talk about the economy. You can't reopen the economy by just snapping your fingers. You've got to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. Like I was saying to Jake, and I believe in science, we've got to do this with the best scientific evidence that we can on how to do it safely. We need to do the same thing with our schools. The second thing we need to do here is we need to make sure that there are enough resources for the schools to be able to do this. And this is really important at multiple levels. One is that school costs are going to go up. They're going to, if classes need to shrink, fewer children in a classroom, that means we've got to have more teachers and more teachers' aides. That means we got to spend more money. Children who haven't been together for a long time, there are a lot of kids facing trauma over this. Children who've lost grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents during this pandemic. We're going to need more counselors, more mental health support for our kids as they come back to school. Children who are going to have to learn, little kids, about wearing masks if that's what it takes, or staying socially distanced. That all means lots of help for those kids. That takes resources. So we need to put in resources to cover the extra expenses. But we need to be putting in resources for a second reason, and that is state and local budgets have just dropped like a rock. The money that had been coming in from taxes from small businesses, from taxes from individuals who are now out of work, small businesses that are now closed, means revenues are shrinking. And so here in Massachusetts, we're talking about a huge budget deficit. At the same time, we need to be spending more money on our schools. So you asked me about the federal government. This is where the federal government can be helpful. The federal government can put in the resources in order to both fill the hole and to help pay for the additional help and care that our schools need. So that's part two. Part three, as we're working out plans to open our schools safely, it's really important who's at the table. It's not enough just to have politicians at the table or elected officials at the table, or even officials from the school board. We need to make sure that at the table, parents are represented, teachers are represented, staff are represented, because they will have the best ideas for how needs can be met locally. So I see it. I started with the whole idea about science. We get good standards on what needs to be done to provide for our children safely. We get enough resources to do that, and then enough the right people at the table to implement that at the local level. That's how we can best open our schools and open it for our children and keep them all safe. There's one more part to this, though, that I have to mention, and that is we need to get rid of Betsy DeVos. I've just had it. We need a Secretary of Education who's going to work with teachers and with states and with districts to try to develop reopening plans that actually work and that are based in science. Instead, we've got a Secretary of Education who's trying to use this pandemic to pull money out of public education and to put it elsewhere, to put it into private education. I believe that public dollars should stay in public schools. And until we get rid of Betsy DeVos, we are going to have a problem at the federal level with helping our states and helping our local communities with their schools as much as we need. I guess all that ties back to what I was talking about earlier, and that is why the election November 3rd is so important. It's about Donald Trump, you bet it is, but it is also about Betsy DeVos. It is about our children, it is about our schools, it is about our future. So those are kind of the main pieces for me here. I just can't think of anything that's more important right now. Our kids are our future, and playing politics with them, saying that Betsy DeVos wants to take away money, Donald Trump wants to take away money from our schools, unless they do what he wants to do for political reasons, regardless of what our medical professionals are telling us, that undermines fundamentally the values we live as a people. And that is not only to try to take care of each other, but most of all, to take care of our children and future generations. So this one is really important, but there are paths for how we can do this. We just have to be willing to step up and fight the fight to get it done. And the next step will happen in Congress with this next response to the coronavirus. And I think we at least have a chance of getting what we need in there. And I hope we can get this done quickly so people can start making plans around school for this fall.
Thank you, Amanda, for those questions. Okay, up next we have Rebecca in Framingham. Rebecca?
Hi, Senator Warren. It breaks my heart when I've had some mental health struggles myself, and it breaks my heart when doctors have to send kids home and they're not ready, and that's not okay for insurance reasons. It's horrible.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's just say it here. Healthcare is a basic human right, and mental health care is healthcare. We need to be offering healthcare to everyone. The Commonwealth does. We are committed to this. We're not doing a perfect job yet, but trying to move in this direction. And we need to make sure that all forms of healthcare are available to everyone. You know, this crisis has been really hard on a lot of people. And the isolation has been really challenging for young people, for older people, for people who already were facing challenges, and for people who are facing new challenges. Layered on that are people who are dealing now with unemployment, who are dealing with the death of a friend or a loved one, people who are concerned about their own health and their own future. This is a time when we need more, not less, more mental health support for all of us. And we need to be willing to talk about it openly and make sure that we can find ways to make it happen. One small light that I'd like to point out is that some people are having real success now with telemedicine here. Not everyone, but for some, it works really well. And it means that even people who can't leave their homes, people who have to stay physically isolated, have an opportunity to reach out and get help that they need. I see this as a hopeful development that will give us another avenue to be able to help people now during this crisis. And if we make the right changes in the law, let it persist afterwards as one more way to expand the resources available to people. So let's do this through our schools. Let's do it through telemedicine. But most of all, let's just build a healthcare system that makes all parts of health available to everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. Up next, I see we have Marta in Melrose. Marta?
Hi, Senator Warren. Thank you very much for taking my question. I really appreciate it. My question was with regard to women's rights and reproductive health and your plans to safeguard those.
So, Marta, let's just be blunt here. Donald Trump and the Republicans have been relentless in their efforts to undermine reproductive health care. They have tried to defund Planned Parenthood. They've tried to limit access to contraception. They've worked to gag doctors and spread misinformation. Right now, right-wing lawmakers in states across this country are doing everything they can to turn back the clock and to outlaw abortion. Until we can get a pro-choice majority in the United States Supreme Court, and we will, but until then, states must continue to move forward in securing a future that guarantees rights to a safe, legal abortion, regardless of your zip code, your economic status, your race, your sexual orientation, your immigration status. And I believe the United States Congress should step up here. You know, the strong majority, about 2/3 to 3/4 of all Americans believe in the rule of Roe versus Wade. They want that to stay the law. Whatever their own personal views are about abortion, Roe versus Wade, like I said, about 3 out of 4 Americans say, let's leave the rule where it is. But with a right-wing Supreme Court, we may see those rights disappear. The United States Congress could pass a law now that guarantees those rights to every woman. You don't have to rely on the Supreme Court. So my view on protecting reproductive health care right now is let's use some democracy. If this is what the majority of people in this country want, then let's step up and make sure that everyone in this nation has access to the full range of health care, and that includes reproductive health care, and it includes the right to a safe, legal abortion. I'm going to keep fighting for that, Marta.
Thanks, Marta. Senator, another consistent theme for questions that we got here, and I'm going to read this question here from Marini in Linfield, who asks, what do you think about the decision to expel and close the door to international students? My son is in Germany finishing his PhD, but his friends are here and they are being told to leave.
I think the decision that ICE has made to expel students who are here is wrong, and I mean deeply wrong. In the first place, it's dumb. It doesn't make us any safer. Anyone who has been here for 14 days poses no greater risk if they were born in a foreign country or if they were born here in the United States. So it's not going to make us any safer with the pandemic raging. It's Donald Trump, once again, trying to stir up as much hatred as much division, as much chaos as he can. And it is about trying to force colleges right now that are working out their own plans for how they want to reopen, trying to force them to do what Donald Trump wants them to do, and that is open whether they think it is safe or not. So I'm not just letting this one pass by. I have already called on ICE to reverse this decision immediately. I put together a letter the very day that it was made public what ICE was doing. And I've gotten, I think it's nearly 100 senators and House members to sign on to that letter. We have sent it over and said, we want to be heard on this. ICE must withdraw this dangerous proposal. You may also know there's now lawsuit pending, and it's right here in district court in Massachusetts. 17 attorneys general from all around the nation have joined in a lawsuit to prevent ICE from deporting foreign students who are here to study. So nobody's giving up on this one. We are fighting it and fighting hard. And I should say the universities are in it too. They are outraged. They want to make their decisions about how best to educate their students, and they want to protect every one of their students. And that means protect the health of their students, but also keep their foreign students here in the United States where they will be able to study and be able to complete their education. So we're going to push back hard against this one.
Thank you, Marie. Excellent question again. Just wanted to do a quick time check, everyone. I think we have time for a couple more questions, and then we'll turn it back over to the Senator for closing comments. So with that, I will turn it over to Juliana in North Reading for the next question. Juliana?
Yes. Hi, Senator. How are you?
Hi, Juliana. I'm good, thank you.
So my question is in regards to immigration. I know for instance that the recent Supreme Court just ruled in favor of DACA, and I myself applied. I'm eligible for DACA, and I applied 4 times, and I was denied 4 times. So I recently applied again, and it's in process. I'm waiting on an answer. And what do you think of the recent comment of Donald Trump and Joe Biden? And what do you expect, to come in the next few months? And if Joe Biden is elected, what do you think it should be done in regards to immigration?
Okay, so thank you, Juliana, for the question. Here's where I start on this. Immigration does not make us weaker as a country. It makes us stronger. Donald Trump wants to divide us. He wants to pit worker against worker, neighbor against neighbor. He wants Americans to blame whatever has gone wrong on those who are new to our country or who don't look the same or in any way different. And he does that as his administration continues to fail every single day. So you may know that it's not just the Supreme Court. We've gotten a temporary reprieve in the Supreme Court, but we need legislation. The House has passed the American Dream and Promise Act. They did that over a year ago. Senate Republicans need to let us bring that to the floor. Stop the political games. Let us just do this. Because I believe if we could get a vote on it, we could actually get a majority and make this the law. We need an immigration system that protects dreamers, but we need an immigration system that doesn't stop there. We need an immigration system that keeps families together, an immigration system that creates a path to citizenship that reflects our values. Joe Biden supports our dreamers. We need this path to citizenship for dreamers and for their families who are here to stay. So you ask me what I believe the world will look like after November 3rd if Joe Biden is elected. I believe that we're going to get the kind of immigration reform that we have needed for years and years. And it's going to be the kind of immigration reform that is built with an understanding that immigration makes this country stronger and that we are a nation that values holding families together and giving people opportunities, that will make us a stronger, better nation.
Thank you, Juliana. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, our time is running out. Our last question here will go to Lenka out in Lincoln. Lenka?
Hello, Senator Warren. It's such a pleasure to see you.
It's good
Nico,
to see
thank you so
you.
much for hosting. My question is, I wish I was able to keep track of everything much closer, and I get overwhelmed and confused with the talk in the Congress about the police reform, and I would like to have some clarity and know what I can do as a citizen to do my part and make sure that an effective police reform gets passed in Congress. Is there a petition I should sign or a phone call I should make? Please give me something to do.
Okay, I like the way you approach this, Lenka, that you're somebody who wants to do something. So let me just remind you where we are. There has been a reform, a policing reform bill that once again has passed the House of Representatives. As you know, we have a Democratic majority over there. It's called the Justice in Policing Act, and it's passed the House of Representatives, and it's got several features in making policing work better and more fairly and making it more accountable. Right now, over in the Senate, Mitch McConnell is blocking us and refusing to let it go forward and refusing to let us have any vote on it. So one of the things you can do is you can always call, write, email, text your elected officials, even though you've got terrific ones here in Massachusetts, just to remind them that this is a priority and that you care about it. But there's more you can do. You can speak up. Staying safe does not mean staying silent. So use social media to get your friends on board. Pitch in $5 to organizations that are working in this area. Volunteer to make a few phone calls or send a few texts. And last but not least, make a plan to vote for Joe Biden. We have an election coming up, and we need to make a change in the White House. In fact, make a plan to vote for Joe Biden and make a plan to vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. We need to make change, and the Democrats are committed to doing this. The Republican Party is doing what it's done before. It's the party of no. They don't want to make changes. They don't want accountability, and we've got to fight back. That's part of what will be on the ballot November 3rd. So make sure everybody in your family has a plan to vote. It is never too early to make your plan to ensure that your voice is heard. And keep up the pressure. Keep it up through your own actions and through every group you belong to. If you've got a reading group that includes people outside Massachusetts, if you've got an old group from college or high school where you stay in touch, try to get as many people active as you can. This upcoming election in 2020 couldn't be more important, Lenka, and we need to make sure every voice is heard. We're going to make change. We're going to have accountability. We're going to try to attack straight on the racism that exists right now systemically in so many parts of our economy and our criminal justice system. It's going to take making changes at the ballot box. So you can count on me, and I'm going to count on you. We got to get this done.
Lenka, thank you very much for closing us out on an action-oriented note. And thank you all for taking the time to join Senator Warren and us this evening. Senator, turn it over back to you for closing remarks.
All right. So let me just say as we finish this up, thank you, Nico. You are a great state director. I appreciate your doing this. And I know we have lots of people from my team on this call. If there are issues that come up that are more individualized, you should always feel free to get in touch with our office. We will do the best we can to be helpful. I'm glad we got to talk about these issues. I want you to know people were sending in questions. And so even questions that we weren't able to answer directly on this, I'll still hear about them. We'll still talk about them as a team and make sure that we're being responsive. You know, to me, this is a big part of what democracy is about. It's about my trying to make sure that I know what's happening in your lives and what kind of policy help we can give at the federal level, and you're knowing what I'm trying to do, and as Lenka said, how you can be part of it. I'm grateful to every one of you who took a lovely summer evening and spent a little piece of it making an investment in this democracy. You've heard me say many times that not in a million years that I think I would end up in politics, that I would end up as an elected official. But I do know that at this moment, we've got a country that is very much at risk. Our economy is at risk, our health is at risk, our democracy is at risk. And the way that we're going to save this country is that we're going to have to work together. You and me and thousands and millions of people across this Commonwealth and across this state. And parts of it are what we do right here tonight. We raise up the important issues, we talk about what we're doing, and we commit ourselves to action. So thank you very much for being with me tonight. You make me so proud to represent you. Stay in the fight, stay safe out there, and whatever happens, persist. Good night.